Thank you, Jerry, for your hospitality and for putting on what was a very poignant performance for those of you who saw it. I'm going to have to recover a little bit here. First of all, I'm seeing here people that I haven't seen in years, people who have won this award in the past, 3 of those, and a really nice, interesting collection of people from North Carolina. And I'm still trying to blend in with the indigenous and people from people who drove from Minnesota, and also we talk about that later. But I thought it'd be appropriate, and especially this evening, especially all the things that are going on in the world, to ask my good friend Jennifer Copeland, who is director of the 90-year-old North Carolina National Council of Churches, who has been involved in, not for the whole 90 years yet, but she's been making this thing work for about 10 or 15 years. And she has spent a lot of support for me and support for the rest of us when we heard, for example, that George W. Bush was coming to Raleigh to instruct Eagle Scouts on leadership. Okay. This is just one example of how Jennifer rises to the occasion. Her eldest son happens to be an Eagle Scout, and she wrote an incredibly pointed, scathing indictment of how these young Eagle Scouts are going to learn something from George W. Bush. Anyhow, that's just beside the point, and it's actually political, so I don't want to do that. But Jennifer, would you set the tone here for us, and welcome, and
thank you, Ray.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks. I actually lead the North Carolina Council of Churches, only the North Carolina Council, not the National Council, but we're older than the National Council of Churches, which I like to regularly remind them. And so I do greet you on behalf of that organization, North Carolina Council of Churches. 19 denominations across North Carolina, everywhere across North Carolina, big towns, small towns, no towns. I think the tone was set tonight by this production. I hope everybody in the room was here for that. Heavy, somber, real, and the truth, right? Truth. In my faith tradition, Christian, as Ray has mentioned, there are wonderful visions of what real peace looks like. Not merely peace as the absence of violence, but peace that provides for the flourishing of all people to their God-given potential. We often use the Hebrew word, shalom. And the reason we use that word and don't translate it is because shalom is so much bigger than simple peace. Of course, given the state of the world right now, today, Minnesota, Venezuela, given the state of the world right now, simple peace kind of seems like a reach, doesn't it? But real peace is different. Real peace comes in visions like one from Isaiah, where Isaiah tells the people, the wolf shall live with the lamb, the nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp. And Isaiah said those things to people who were watching Babylon bear down on them. And I'm sure they laughed at Isaiah, because who cares about wolves and lambs when we need to fortify the battlements for invasion? But you see, in the face of danger and atrocities, that's when we have to cling to the visions of what the world could be like, or what the world should be like. And only by knowing what it should be can we accurately name what's wrong in the moment, in this moment. Anthony Aguilar. Tony, they call you? The latest recipient of the Sam Adams Award for Integrity, along with probably each recipient who has come before him, clearly has a plumb line for naming what's wrong. Now, if you have read anything about him, as I have over the last several weeks, and you might say, well, anybody could tell us that shooting innocent people, children, who show up at a food distribution site, anybody could tell us that that is wrong. We don't need to read Amos and Isaiah to know that. But here's the thing, and how appropriate given the production we have just seen. Anybody can tell us that? Because, friends, it has happened over and over and over and over again with similar results and atrocities. And nobody told us a lot of the time. But even when they told us, even still, some people can justify it, brush it away. Now, you know all the justification excuses, so I'm not going to bore you with that list of heresies. But I will say to you that we must not settle for simple peace. As elusive as that even feels to us, we must not settle for simple peace, merely the absence of violence. That would be a great place to start, but we must always be in pursuit of real peace. And that means paying attention, and it means speaking out. We have to shift, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but maybe we can go home, preach to somebody there, go to the streets. A lot of us go in the streets all the time, right? I see so many familiar faces. We must convince people to shift from being passive recipients of the curated information offered to us and become those actively in pursuit of truth. And that starts by listening to people like Tony Aguilar, who names the truth. And let me tell you, once you know something, you can't unknow it. Once you know something, you must act. Not to act is to be complicit in the lie and to become participants in the violence. Now, that's a heavy burden, friends. Truth is a heavy burden. But without truth, there will never be peace. And we will just keep settling for a world that is not all it is meant to be. So on this night, as we gather in this space that is committed to peacemaking, blessed are the peacemakers among us. Blessed are you, Tony Aguilar. And may all of us go and do likewise.
I don't know if this is apocryphal from Isaiah, but someone told me that he walked around for 2 whole years stark naked. It's in the Bible. What was he saying? He was saying, you are aghast at my nakedness. I'm walking around, you're saying, this is terrible. You're deprived of your clothes. Well, I say to you, you're deprived of the vision that Yahweh blessed you with, the vision of shalom, and that is a much more meaningful deprivation. You're deprived of the vision, I'm just deprived of my clothes. Now, I think that's in the Bible. 2 years is a long time, and he didn't meet a nice end, as I understand, but he was pretty outspoken in saying the vision, the peace, shalom, which is really the presence of justice. So I'm not going to talk very much. We have really good people here, and what I wanted to say is that Sam Adams was a colleague of mine. We went into the agency at the same time, and we got our portfolios. Mine was Russian relations with China, His was counting up how many communists there were in Vietnam. And make a long story short, the U.S. military had not counted up how many enemy there were since 1954, working off French order of battle, okay? So Sam went in there, found out that there were twice as many Viet Cong under arms in South Vietnam, 500 to 600,000. Westmoreland, the head of the commander-in-chief there in Saigon, would only admit to 299,000 enemy under arms. Everyone in Washington agreed with Sam Adams, but the head of CIA, well, he gave in because he told us, and get this is the way bureaucracy works in Washington. He said, look, your numbers are correct. Only the Army disagrees here, but I'm not going to approve this estimate. And we said, why? He said, because my primary job is to protect the agency, the CIA. And there's no way I can protect the agency if I get involved in a pissing match with the U.S. Army at war. So, Sam's numbers were not heeded at 1967. Were they to have been heeded, the war would have ended quite quickly and not dwindled down to 73, 75. Count how many thousands of people, how many millions of people on the Vietnam side would have still be alive. Last thing I'll say is there is a new book, Precious Freedom, by an award-winning author about Vietnam. He spent the last 10 years there. His book is about why the Vietnamese won. It's unique. It's not about why the United States lost, but it's why the Vietnamese won. James Bradley is his name. The book is just out. Take a look at it. No more commercials here. I will say that it was a pleasure being a friend of Sam Adams and to try to support him in what he did. Sam was not one to go out of the system, and so he never really blew the whistle. He just tried to, one time he tried to get the head of the CIA disciplined by the Inspector General of the CIA. You can imagine how that one came out, right? So he was a little naive in that. He died at 54, tortured by the notion that he might have stopped the war if he had gone out of channels and just said what he did, with documentary evidence, some of which I saw myself and didn't have the guts to blow the whistle with. Enough on that. Thank you again, Jennifer, setting the tone here. Really glad that I got to know some people in North Carolina. Slithering out of the swamp 7 years ago, it was the best thing I ever did. And landing down here in this very welcome, kind of nice people here, you know. They didn't want to honk at you if you sleep when there's a red light. You know, they get out and knock on your window. It's true, folks. Okay, now, what we'd like to do before the award ceremony proper is to hear from three of our previous awardees, okay? And the first one is Colleen Raleigh. She came to my attention when she wrote a letter to the head of the FBI, which leaked, okay? It leaked. And the Congress was interviewing her, and if I can find this thing that I printed out before I came here, yeah, okay. Here's the gutsy person that Colleen Raleigh was. Now, Colleen doesn't sing her own praises, but I do. It's real easy. Here it is, February 29th, 2003, so a good almost a month before the war. Mr. FBI Director, Mr. Mueller, okay? I know from experience that the FBI's policy on permissible use of deadly force has served the FBI and the country well. It should be noted, however, that the administration's new policy of preemptive strikes is not consistent with the Department of Justice deadly force policy. for law enforcement. DOJ justice policy restricts federal agents to using deadly force only, think Venezuela now, think Iraq, think DOJ policy restricts federal agents to use deadly force only when presented with an imminent threat of death or serious injury. Okay. I believe it would be prudent, says Colleen Raleigh, GS 14 at the time, to the head of the FBI. I believe it would be prudent to be on guard against the possibility that the looser preemptive strike rationale being applied to situations abroad could migrate back home, fostering a more permissive attitude toward shootings by law enforcement officers in this country. Now, when Colleen goes out on a limb and warns the FBI director about that, and it comes true, well, nobody's going to remember what Colleen said except us, okay? Nice going, Colleen. You said other things in this letter, and the other thing I'll mention is, look, Mr. Director, you say that there are ties between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. Prove it. I've seen no evidence. And he never proved it, did he? Would you give us a couple of comments?
Yeah, you hate to be right about such horrible things. And, you know, when I were watching the play, one of the lines really strikes home, and I'm sure it strikes home with you, is why are there not more people outraged? At this point, it's a genocide. It's been going on since a slower genocide, even since Rachel Corrie and before that. And now it's gone full-blown. It hasn't stopped. The ceasefire hasn't stopped it. And, you know, we honored in our Sam Adams, we honored Aaron Bushnell, the prior, a couple of times before, we were in Washington. And what he said was, what people always wonder, what would you do if you're living during the German Holocaust? What would you do if you would actually, now we all had the luxury of not thinking we would ever be in a situation watching people being led to a gas chamber or little babies being killed or little 7-year-olds being shot right in front of you. You never thought you would have to witness this type of thing. So Aaron Bushnell said, what you're doing now is what you would be doing. And of course, he couldn't handle it, and he set himself on fire. Because you know what? There are some people, Rachel Corrie, very similar. You know what? You're risking your life. And there's another person who was waiting in Istanbul to go on the Gaza flotilla with me a couple years ago. And we all thought, you know what? We're risking our life here to go on this flotilla, that Israel will bomb our ship. But you know what? How can you live with yourself if you don't try to do something? And again, here's the sad part about predicting that these wars and this preemptive violence will migrate home. Today in Minnesota, the ICE agent shot a 37-year-old woman in her car. And our governor, I didn't, there's a video out. It doesn't look like she was doing anything. Trump says, oh, we think it was self-defense, shooting a woman, ICE agents. Because why is this happening? Because this demonization that we've used on Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Venezuela, Ukraine, we've used it over and over, all lies. We demonize a people based on their leader, trying to say that, you know, there's no law anymore, no international law. We get to use, you know, my husband and I driving out here from Minnesota, we're listening to the Fox News, and they said right up front, no more law. That is a joke, international law. It's not just international law, it's domestic law. Yeah. Because now this is migrated home. And it is now showing up in all of our mass shootings. I have written 5 times or 6 times since that warning about the fact that these mass shootings don't have motives. Our police officers will say, oh, police are searching for the motive. There's no motive. It's the fact that our country is so incensed now that a lot of people don't know how to handle it, and they pick up a gun, whether it's road rage, they got cut off in traffic, they lost their job, they can't get a date. Those are not motives for murder. Though what that is a country that's unhinged. It's a country that's unhinged in this, and I told the news today, I said, I think we're at another Kent State moment. That's what this is, the shooting. And before this, we had a guy went and shot 2 of our senators and their families. That just happened a few months ago. And then a shooting at a school, which is almost daily. So again, if we're going to preach, I think one of the things to preach is that evil, even though it's very difficult to confront evil, very difficult, but you know, it is difficult, but if we do not confront it, it comes back. The Bible says, reap what you sow. The other religions call it karma. And this is what's happening right now. It is CIA calls it blowback. And that is what's happening. And it wasn't actually that hard to predict. Anyway, we're very honored to have in our midst here tonight Anthony Aguilar, who didn't want to be complicit with this. How can you live with yourself? And he has spoken out so eloquently about what he had to witness in Gaza with a group calling itself humanitarian. That's the worst part about it is the way that language is being absolutely butchered upside down, saying that we are killing the Venezuelans because we're bringing them peace and love. I mean, that's what they're saying. They're saying we're bringing peace and love to the world by killing and murdering these people. Anyways, I've got a little outrage here. And I'm going to turn it over to, can Karen come up?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Bill. There are times when outrage is warranted, right? These are those times.
Righteous anger.
How long did it take you to drive from St. Paul, Minnesota?
My husband, I have a good chauffeur, but we did channel switch a lot because we were looking for a voice like Anthony's on the news. Unfortunately, we did not hear one the whole way here. 20 hours in the car.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, thank you, Colleen. Now, Bill Binney is the next in line here. I have a couple words to say about you, Bill, before you get up. Bill won our award in 2012, I think it was. 15, okay, 2015. And one distinctive thing about Bill is that other people, like Edward Snowden, whom some of you know about, right? I made the remark that if it weren't for Bill Binney, there would be no Edward Snowden. So this is what solidarity is, folks. That's what good example, like what Tony is exemplified here. It comes around and it encourages people. Bill was recognized by everybody at NSA, the National Security Agency, as the top analyst, and he devised systems that could have prevented 9/11, demonstrably prevented 9/11, but they didn't cost enough. They only cost $300 million, and NSA could get $6 billion to do the same work that didn't work. Now, that's part of this thing. But Bill, would you come up here and say a couple words?
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, especially to meet and be with people who have integrity and character. People who will stand up for the truth and expose it to everyone who really needs to know. Like, for example, I'll give you a little background on me. I invented everything they're doing for mass surveillance. All the programs are the things I designed, and they turned that on everybody in this country. And when they did that, I had to stand up too. But let me say, the price you have to pay when you do that is not low, it's really high. Even today, my wife and I are still being attacked by them. And you should not think that you're going to be left alone, because they really hate people who go against them. and they don't forget. They're all criminals. They all belong in jail. I tried to get them into the Supreme Court, into different appellate courts. And every time I try to do that, the judges won't let me testify. I even put affidavits in for General Flynn and Roger Stone in their cases, which debunked the entire basis for their being investigated. And the judges would not let me testify. It's just that, see, when you invented the program, see, when I came out, I stayed within the government channels. The standard channels they said you should go to, the intelligence committees and the inspector generals. Well, I went to the inspector general of the Department of Defense, the inspector general of the Justice Department, and to the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee. And none of them would do anything about this violation of the fundamental rights under the Constitution or any number of laws in this country. And they're still doing it. They're using this data randomly collected on everyone. You all are being collected. And they're using that to look for crime, primarily. But as part of the consequences of that, we're being attacked, my wife and I, with some form of directed energy weapons and various other things. We have spectrum. I never say anything, the VIPs know I never say anything without having scientific evidence, okay?
Right.
So for this, we have spectrum analyzers, and we use them at our house, and we detected the specific frequencies they're using. And these are all military frequencies, and they are orders of magnitude stronger than anything else in the environment. Now, according to Dr. Barry Trower, a former British analyst and developer of electronic, these electronic weapons, these things can cause cancer and various other problems when exposed to them for long periods of time, or even for short periods of time in strong doses. I mean, it's like standing in front of a radar. And so we're experiencing this. We had that. Those are at 1.755 to 1.79 megahertz or gigahertz, and in the 2 to 3 gigahertz range. Those are line of sight. Now these things were, with the curvature of the Earth, you see, you have to be within 5 or 6 to 12 miles of the target to be able to see it, because the curvature of the Earth, you go over, you get that curvature covers you after that distance. Well, we had these things pointed at us, and we measured them with our spectrum analyzers in Maryland, and they're down now here with us, down living in North Carolina. So they moved with us. So we're being targeted. And we further know from other evidence, like we also know we're being spied on internally. You should watch for this. We had, my wife was called to testify in a court case in Oregon, which was a fake thing. But one of the questions the person asked was, can you explain to me the mathematics of spin? Now, my wife has her doctorate from Oxford, England, in particle physics, and she ran experiments in CERN and DAISY accelerators. She's the physicist. I'm the mathematician. You know, I do numbers, letters, bits, and bytes. She does the physical things. You know, like what are the properties of electrons, protons, things like that, and colliding particles and things like that. So I depend on her to do that, and she's opened my eyes on a number of things. You know, as a government employee, I couldn't believe our government was doing, but they are. They're doing all. You've heard of the Havana syndrome thing. This is part of that. These things go back to the early 70s, at least, when the Russians used it on the embassies in Moscow, our embassy in Moscow, and the Chinese have done that. They've used these kinds of weapons against our people there, and our government's using it against us. So don't be surprised if you are, in some form or other, followed, listened to, and your privacy is violated. This is what they do to whistleblowers. It's a heavy price to pay. And of course, they make you incapable of getting a job anywhere, too. They'll interfere with that, too. They did that with us, too, shut us down. Yeah. But I want to congratulate you, and it's nice to know there are other people out there with integrity and character.
Thank you, Bill. Next up would be Karen Katowski, who won the award in 2018. And that was the last award that I presided over at Whistler, Washington at the time. It was a real wonderful presentation. She had her family with her. And Karen, I'll just say one thing about Karen. We knew about her, and she was very much writing and being part of Veteran Intelligence Professional for Sanity. But we went to a big premiere of a film called Shock and Awe by Rob Reiner. Man, there was a terrific portrayal of these two honest analysts for Knight Ridder, who got weapons of mass destruction and the fact that there weren't any there, got it right. Okay, the only ones, okay? And so this great film, and there's this one key person who briefed these two journalists and was an incredible woman, worked in the Pentagon. And so when the film was over, Reiner came up and we had questions and answers, and then this young lady named Karen Katowski came down from up in the bleachers and said, I just want to tell all my colleagues as well as people here that was I. That was me. And it was really quite a revelation, and it was quite a service, blowing the whistle in a very discreet way that not even we knew what Karen had been doing. Karen, could you speak with me for a minute? Karen.
It's a great honor to be here with the people here, and there's so much going on. I'm still moved by the Rachel Corrie thing. This is the first time I'd ever seen it, and very moved by that. But what I want to say was, back in 2002 and early 2003, when I was anonymously sharing what we all know to be true now, that we were lied into war, and what I naively thought was maybe that was the first time, but what I now know is that every time we go to war, we're lied into war, and we see it repeatedly. But in that process, I retired from the military and I began writing publicly. The thing that caught the Knight Ridder's attention, because I was working with those guys while I was still active duty, but James Webb, who used to be the Secretary of the Navy, and of course I don't know, he calls me out of the blue because he was reading articles that I was writing, and he had followed the work that Colonel Hackworth had done in his Soldiers for the Truth website, where he published my anonymous reporting, so to speak, my opinions, and some of it was dark humor and it wasn't particularly analytical. I was in many ways poking fun at the Pentagon that I was serving, and also revealing what they were doing, but of course most people weren't surprised by that. Hackworth was not surprised by that. And, you know, I don't know if you remember Colonel Hackworth, but he wasn't big on women in the military, okay? That was not his thing. And so I was surprised that he was so willing to publish my, to basically give me the login to his site so I could publish my articles while I was still active duty. And he understood the need for anonymity at that time. But the reason it dawned on me later, the reason that he was, is because he had many other sources in the Pentagon that were telling people he trusted, people he knew, men that he worked with, men that he served with, who were telling him much the same things. So the voice that you have that's small, it can be big. James Webb calls me up out of the blue, and he says, you need to write your story, not on Lou Rockwell and not on Soldiers for the Truth, but you need to tell what you know in a very concise way in an op-ed. And he said, I'll help you do that. I'll help you write it. Because I didn't know what an op-ed, I knew what they were. I didn't write op-eds. I wrote snarky little articles. And he helped me do it. I drafted up what I thought it would be, and he went back and forth a few times. And then he said, I'll help you get it published. He said, I have contacts in the New York Times, the Post, everywhere. I'm James Webb. I'm the former, highly connected guy. And he worked, and finally he got it in a couple of Knight Ridder papers, in a couple of city papers. In Akron, Ohio, Beacon is where they put it. And that came out, I was already retired. Well, I was on, I was on my terminal leave, so technically they could have reached in and strangled me, but they didn't. And that op-ed, that very concise op-ed that James Webb helped me with. And the reason I bring it up is, and later, of course, Rob Reiner had didn't know who I was, but he knew the story, and he worked with the Knight Rider guys. Made a really cool movie, and that was fun. And it was years later, many years later, but it reached a lot more people than the Akron Beacon op-ed did. And just the other day, I saw an article, I think it was in one of the think tanks that speaks for shalom, it speaks for peace and wise foreign policy. And there was a really interesting and well-written and knowledgeable opinion piece, report kind of thing. And the guy who wrote it was James Webb's son, who was an active duty Marine who had served. And I'm telling you, the message is not lost. It's never lost. And last summer, when I heard that the humanitarian foundation paid for by Trump that was going to go work with the Israelis to do great things in Gaza, I had already, like so many of us here, you can't even talk about it. It's too frustrating. But I thought, and I wrote this in a couple of articles for Lou Rockwell and on my Substack and for the Judge. I wrote that, something good will come out of this, not because they intend it to, but because they're going to put American soldiers, eyewitness on the ground in Gaza, because nobody can do it. They killed journalists for a reason, okay? They managed to manipulate the media for a reason. But I said, you can't stop a soldier. You can't stop an American soldier with the spine. And this will happen, and we will get to see and hear. And it was not 3 weeks after I wrote that when I saw what you had come up with, and I watched the Tucker Carlson interview and the other things. And of course, the second Tucker Carlson interview, of course, they came after you like nuts, which is what Bill has said, and it will never stop. But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because the light can't be put out. So many things from just people saying what they see and calling it out. Is this right? Is it wrong? We don't know. We don't know if it's right or wrong, but we have our suspicions, and we ask those questions, and that's really all it takes. And we witness. And that's what you did, and I was one of a couple people who nominated you for this, because to me there was nobody else that deserved it for this year. You have done wonderful things, and I think many things are going to come good from it. Already have. Wonderful things have happened, but you cannot stop it. It just continues to go. And that's been my experience with meeting these people, who none of which I would have known had I not simply just said, this doesn't look right, and I said something. And you did the same. So I'm so glad you're here and being honored today.
Thank you.
I want to ask a show of hands. How many are Sam Adams awardees and also lieutenant colonels? Raise your hand, please.
Two now.
Should have asked, is there anyone here from Homeland Security?
Somewhere here.
I wish that were funny. Well, as you can see, we're a pretty informal group, and we do like to do formality at some point, and now we're going to present the Oscar that we have chosen, the Emmy Award or the whatever, which is a corner brightener candlestick holder to shine light into dark places. Colleen, do you have that with you there? And with this candlestick holder, we have a citation which, if you'll indulge me, I'll read right now. Classified top secret, so I had to put my coat over it. Tony, would you stand up here? And Colleen, maybe you could just stand by on the other side with the candlestick holder. Sam Adams Associates for Integrity know by these presents that Anthony Aguilar is hereby honored with this traditional Sam Adams corner brightener candlestick holder in symbolic recognition of his courage in shining light into dark places. After 25 years in Army Special Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar signed up with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to help feed the hungry in Gaza, only to learn that the word humanitarian was a cynical misnomer. The Israeli military had designed the food distribution sites to serve also as shooting galleries. Hundreds of Palestinians seeking food were killed, thousands wounded. Tony had never before witnessed such brutality, and Tony had been around 25 years, Green Beret. Yes, Bishop Desmond Tutu wrote decades ago that life in Palestine was far more brutal than in apartheid South Africa. But for Tony, as for Rachel Corrie, seeing was believing. Sensitive, courageous hearts are deeply moved by innocent suffering. Tony videoed the killing and tried to stop it. He quit the humanitarian outfit, such as it was, and then very cleverly, well, he used his skills, his well-known skills, practice skills, to exfiltrate himself from Gaza with the evidence. That's why you know, that's why you can see the video now on things like Democracy Now! And on our website. Pretty bright, okay, well, the videos that he and another one of our members, Josie Gilbo, of their disrupting Congress, those went viral because they were both in uniform and they were both protesting against the same thing, against the congressional committee that was above the fray and was just happy to see Palestinians slaughtered. Okay, Tony blew the whistle loudly. Together with Josephine Gilbo, an Army intelligence officer of similar grit and conscience, he pierced the inner sanctum of Congress to expose its complicity in mass starvation and genocide. Mass starvation and genocide, my God. In early 1933, a few years before the genocide in Europe, a university student in Berlin lamented that most Germans lacked courage, that they were acting with sheepish submissiveness in ceding power to the Nazis. He wrote, "What was missing among Germans was a solid inner kernel that cannot be shaken by external pressure, something noble and steely, a reserve of pride, principle, and dignity to be drawn on in the hour of trial." That solid inner kernel is not missing in Anthony Aguilar. We, Sam Adams Associates for Integrity, are honored to give him his place among the 23 earlier recipients, first one being Pauline Raleigh, of our annual award, presented this 7th day of January 2026 by admirers of the example set by CIA analyst Sam Adams with his prescient analysis on Vietnam. No one can do these things alone. Those who have spouses need at least their acquiescence, and in this case, wholesome support. And I urge you to Allison do that. And we haven't done this before, but we think it befits this kind of company to say, look, we're all doing this with the support of our close friends and spouses. And for you, Allison, we brought something special here. Da-da-da-da.
It's so important. Thank you.
Those are fresh strawberries, right?
Fresh strawberries from the farmer's market.
Well, now, Tony, we're looking forward to your talk here now, and we're eager to hear what you have to say, but know that you're honored already, and there's nothing you can say will make us weep.
Well, I just want to first say that I'm truly honored and humbled and touched and just impressed by those that have come before me and those that have made an example and give us all example and hope. And there's nothing more important than the truth. And that's no more important than it is today. And the truth matters even more, the light in the darkness. And before I talk about the awards specifically, I wanted to touch on the play that we all just watched and that I had the honor of participating in. This really touched me, and it really moved me. And in a way, it's further solidified my steadfast devotion to my cause, to our cause, to the cause of the truth. And I'll tell you why. I was in Gaza. I was in Tel al-Sultan, Rafah. I was exactly where Rachel was. When I was there, one of the Palestinian aid workers who had worked at one of our sites showed me the spot we stood, in the same spot where that bulldozer was. I've stood next to one of those bulldozers. I've watched Israeli tanks and Israeli soldiers shoot and kill unarmed, starving Palestinians. The reason this makes me more confident in the truth is that Rachel and I come from completely different parts of life, different parts of the world. She grew up in Olympia, Washington, where they eat granola. I grew up in South Texas, where beef is what's for dinner. You know? I grew up in a Catholic household with military parents. My mother served in the Air Force. My father served in the Navy. And our paths to Gaza couldn't be more different, except at that point, in that she wanted to help. I was there because I wanted to help. What she saw and what she shared is also what I saw. It just blew me away that in reading through the play that in her diary or in her journal she wrote about the violations of the Geneva Convention, the violations of international law. Those are the same things that I had said, that I saw that were wrong. And I didn't even know Rachel's story. I didn't know the full story. I knew who she was. I didn't know the full story. And to be honest, I didn't know much of the story because on March 16th of 2003, when she was killed, 4 days later, we invaded Iraq. This didn't get reported. And as Rachel Curry was there as an activist, I was fighting war. And yet, 22 years later, here we are, and our story is so much the same. When you have observation of something from two different points, and you both see the same thing, that is the truth. In my time in Gaza, what I experienced, what I witnessed, and what I saw will haunt me forever. There is not a night that I go to sleep. There is not a day that I wake up. There is not a time throughout the day that at some point I don't think about Palestinians and what I saw and what's happening in Gaza. What scares me is that that tyranny and that oppression is now being exported around the world. And as you said earlier, I hate to say I'm right, But when I came home from Gaza, I went on to Tucker and I went on to other platforms, I said, the reason Palestine matters, we are all Palestinian, and the reason that matters is because the tyranny there will be exported around the world, and we are seeing it right now. I envisioned my retired life with hot cup of coffee, walking the dog, being a scoutmaster in my son's Boy Scout troop, being a deacon at my church, playing in the bell choir at my church. If you can imagine a Green Beret playing bells. My wife will test you. But my wife and my son will also tell you that there is nothing that I do not do with the most steadfast determination and sometimes a little much. From taking out the trash to brushing my teeth. So it's no different with this because I'm committed to it because it matters. When I was called by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or recruited by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, I wasn't called by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I was called by UG Solutions, a contract company right here in North Carolina. Called me and said, we're going to feed the Palestinians. And I took out my whiteboard to make a decision because it was a Tuesday. And I said, how long do I have to decide? And they said, we're getting on a plane Friday. I had just retired. I hadn't even knocked the dust off the boots yet. And I told myself, what am I getting myself into? And I even asked and told my wife beforehand, I said, this sounds like a shit show, excuse my language. But somebody has to go help. So I took out my whiteboard and I wrote down, what does Tony know? 1, people are starving and dying. 2, the aid mechanism of UNRWA that was once allowed to go in has now been banned. 3, this organization, for whatever it is or isn't, mind you, the GHF was not a historical legacy organization, it just appeared. They're going to provide food. I have skills and attributes. I want to be a part of it. So I went, knowing those 3 things. In looking back on why I felt so inclined to tell the truth, I often think about and reflect on Tony's 2 different paths. I very much could have stayed there and turned a blind eye and said, like many others, this isn't my problem. Nothing I can do about it. It's not me killing them. I didn't make this situation. Getting paid $2,000 a day. Could have come home a millionaire. But all the money and treasure and jewels and gold and materialism in the world, as high as you can stack it, doesn't outweigh the truth. The truth is a very simple thing. It's not difficult. It's the easiest of things. The reason it's hard, because it often means you're going to sacrifice something else. And it made me reflect. You know, I graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point. The motto is duty, honor, country. When I graduated and I left, it didn't say, you know, now leaving New York, the honor code doesn't apply. Duty, honor, country. And when I put on my uniform and I serve my country, and what I've told so many people, even other veterans that have come after me to say, you're a traitor. How dare you? I remind them, when I entered service, when I raised my right hand as a second lieutenant and I took my oath, I did not take an oath to a president, a king, a tyrant, the Congress, a political party. I didn't even take an oath to the Army. And I invite everybody to read it. The officer's oath. The officer's oath of commissioning. I, Anthony Bailey Aguilar, do solemnly swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I take this obligation freely, so help me God, period. That's it. It's very simple. What is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Venezuela, what is happening in our world not only violates international law, it violates our own laws. Period. That is a fact. U.S. Code 18, genocide. Look it up. U.S. Code Title 10 and the use of the military. Look it up. We are breaking our own laws. What are we as a people, as a nation, as a world without laws? Because the superpower of today will not be that of the future. And if we do not have orders-based rules and laws, what then will become of us? That's why it matters. That's why the truth matters. This much truth matters this much. As a child in high school, before books were banned and people could still read, I read 1984, George Orwell. And there's a quote in there that will always stand out to me, that in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. In a time of deceit, truth shouldn't be revolutionary. Truth should be simple. But that's the world we're living in now. And the only thing that changes that, just like in 1984, is breaking the machine. I've often asked myself, and I often criticize myself in my head, like, Tony, why couldn't you just be quiet? Not your fight. Since I've been back, death threats. The guilt I feel about not being able to go back to Gaza to help. I yearn to do that, and I can't. Because the death threats that I've received, that if I go back, I will not come back alive. They will kill me. That is a fact. Also, the government of Israel has banned me from returning, which I framed. I see it as a official notification. I'm not allowed to go back under this. After my arrest on September 3rd in Congress, shortly thereafter, because I spoke out on the genocide, I received a nice little letter that I am no longer allowed banned entry into Israel. And I framed it, and I'm proud of it. I will go back one day to Palestine. I'll wrap it up in saying that on September 3rd, 2025, I was arrested in Congress. And out of all of my years of service, 25 years in uniform, as a West Point graduate, as an infantry officer, as a Green Beret, having fought in 4 wars. In the last quarter century, I fought in every war our country has been in. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, the southern Philippines, Tajikistan, where many of you probably don't even know we're fighting a war. Yemen, Somalia, Jordan, all over the world. What I did in Congress on the 3rd of September when I stood up, this is what I said. Mind you, it was the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. I intentionally chose that committee. And I stood up, and I held up a copy of the Constitution of the United States. And I said 2 simple things. The United States government is complicit in genocide. That's a fact. 2, you, members of Congress, are violating your oath to the Constitution. Period. And I was tackled, and I was dragged out, and I was arrested. And I was handcuffed, and I was stripped searched in the basement, and I was thrown in the paddy wagon, and I was put in jail. And I've never been prouder. And I should do it. From a personal perspective of why, I'm a Christian, raised Catholic household, Hispanic, Mexican. I know one thing to be true. There are a lot of things that I don't know about the world, and there are a lot of things that we can always say are objective, or subjective. There's one thing I know. I will die one day. All of us will die one day. And throughout all the religions and all the faiths, there is a belief for most, not all, that there's a maker, whoever that may be, whatever it may be. I know for me, by my faith and by what I believe, that one day I will face my maker, whatever that may be. And I know that in what I've seen on this earth and in this life, I'll be asked, step forward. I gave you eyes to see. Why did you look away? It was convenient. It was easy. Not a good answer. I gave you a brain to think. Why did you not think for yourself and just follow what other people said? Well, I was scared. I didn't want to be different. I gave you a heart to feel and have compassion. How can you not care about children, mothers, when you've seen a father carrying their starved child dead in their arms? When you see a child whose leg is blown off and it's held on with duct tape because there's no hospital? When a mother is crying for food, showing you on a wooden pallet that she dragged her dead children. I gave you a heart, and how could you not feel? Not my problem. It's the wrong answer. And I gave you courage to speak out and tell the truth. Why didn't you? I was afraid of what they'd say about me on TikTok. I was afraid about, well, I won't be able to make a lot of money. People won't like me. Doesn't matter. I choose to leave a legacy behind for my son and for others. Not of riches, not of wealth, not of money, not of material, but character. I can live in a bridge, in a box, with a can of corn, and we will be happy. We can look at ourselves in the mirror. So I am so honored and humbled for those of you that have traveled so far, for those of you that are local and came. I'm so honored to have been a part of this play and to meet 13 other amazing friends that we shared this stage with in this amazing story. I would ask everybody, I've often, I go to Congress once a month and I petition the government. I do it every month with Doctors Against Genocide. I'm going to continue to do it. And I'm constantly asked, what can we do? What can we do? What do you do? So I would ask everybody in the coming weeks, pay attention, follow me. I have some announcements that will be coming out because I'm going to take things to the next level to change our government. And I need everybody's support in doing it. And I just want to end by saying, Free Palestine.
Anthony says he's proud of his dad.
But also, as we were sitting here earlier, I asked him, I was like, hey, hold my hand. And he looked at me and he said, pay attention.
Okay, I just have a couple of minutes worth to end up with here. I want to tell you that it was really quite a moving experience to do the 2 days of 3 hours rehearsal of the play and to have Tony there with me. And when Tony said he was going to wear his keffiyeh, I said I would wear mine, and I'm glad that Allison has her on it today too, and one or two others. But I have to tell you something very moving that happened to me. About 5 o'clock, I got a call from Craig Corey, Rachel's dad, and he said, "Oh, so you're going to be doing this tonight?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What part are you reading?" And it turns out the part that I read was his last words to Rachel. You may recall that he said he had a really hard time writing, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. And he said, "You know, Ray, that's a treasure, that paragraph, because I said I was proud of her, and I was proud of her. And it showed that I respected her and thought that she was doing the right thing, even though a white chauvinist, whatever, insurance salesman." So that was very moving to me, because when I met Craig Corey for the first time with Cindy, it was out in Olympia, Washington, and I had this orange bracelet on against torture, and I saw that he had a green bracelet on, and so I said, "What's that?" No, he said first, "What's that orange thing?" And I said, "Well, it's about torture." I said, "What's that green thing?" And he said, he gave it to me. He didn't say anything, he gave it to me, and it says simply, "Rachel Corey, April 10, 1979, March 16, 2003. Now, he said, "Would you like to have it?" I said, "Of course, but do you have others?" He said, "Yeah, I got others." Well, this is about the 7th one I'm on. They break after 2 or 3 years, but I read it every day, wore it every day, said shower or not shower. Why? Well, we Catholics call that a sacramental, okay? Not a sacrament, but it's short of that. It will give you, it's something that reminds you of something holy or something sturdy or something. So when I'm doing something like getting jailed like Tony has, and I've been in that same jail, and I've also been in the tombs in Washington and in New York. Anyhow, then I said, "Well, hey, come on, McGovern, it's a big deal. They're going to let you out. This is Rachel here. She's calling you to do this." That's a big deal. And as I'm getting on in age here, I often think of the words that E.F. Stone said, and I'll finish with this. What a guy, that E.F. Stone, journalist. I take a lot of inspiration from this, and I'll read it rather than mess it up like I did in one of my lines there earlier tonight. Stone, I.F. Stone. "The only kinds of fights worth fighting for are those that you're going to lose. Because somebody has to fight them. And lose, and lose, and lose, until someday somebody who believes and acts as you try to wins." So I may not see our winning or our reasserting our beliefs and our actions with respect to the Constitution of the United States. That is the only oath that I have taken as well. Some people take this very seriously, as Karen did, as Colleen did at the FBI, as Bill did at the NSA. It is to protect ourselves from all evils, foreign and domestic. We're up against it now. We're in a time of Tom Paine time where we're going to have to be winter soldiers. And with the inspiration I take from these younger guys, and as I look around, everybody's younger these days, it gives me great hope and helps me to continue on as long as I can. So, Tony, what can we say? Let's have one more round of applause for Tony.